Welcome to Quit to Win, the show where we explore the moments people have to let go of destructive pattern, limiting identity, and the internal battle to rebuild their life with purpose and clarity. Our three guests is Martin J. Watt, entrepreneurs, patent inventor INC 5000 winners, and author of When Doubt Becomes Design. Martin has spent more than a 4 decade building company, product, a new foundation when the path was not clear. His turning point came at 14. The home ecosystem he was against him winning. So he decided to make his own path. His motto ever since was never yield. Martin, it's really a pleasure and honor having you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Benaya.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. So Martin, you were 14 when you decided to stop accepting the instability around you and make your own path out. What did that actually look like at that age? And what was the first move you made?
Well, I wrote this book, When Doubt Becomes Design, and it was interesting to start putting all of that in order.
Yeah.
And because, as business people or just leaders or even leaders of family, we just tend to move forward, right? No matter what. We have to make do. We have to do different things. And so I had, when I really wrote my memoir, it really made me take time to reflect back where those times where I wanted to quit, those times that I wanted to give up. And I would say I grew up in a very traumatic house, and my father was a product of World War II. And back then they didn't have, therapists. They didn't have people to work with. They didn't have, you just had to resolve it on your own. And families typically carried the weight of that. So I was number 9 of 10. So I grew up in a very troubled home. And I would say, and many of us have. And by the way, here's the stats, Benaya. So statistically, 75% of all adults have experienced some sort of trauma in their lives, whether it's a car accident or, a death in the family, or they grew up in a questionable home or whatever that looks like. But 75% of all people have experienced trauma. 73% of all entrepreneurial leaders have some sort of unresolved childhood trauma.
Mm.
And so it's interesting is if we're an entrepreneur and we go heads down and we're building companies and we're building revenue for our families and we're doing those things, and people will often say, well, that's because most of them have experienced some sort of trauma in their lives. Well, but I got to tell you something. I cannot give trauma that much credit. I cannot give background.
Yeah.
I can't give it that much credit, right? So to answer your question, it started as an early age. Doubt showed up in instability of like being hung out a window by my ankle at the age of 4. Like this is serious stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so by the age of 14, I had had enough. And so one other thing is that my father died when I was 5, so I was raised by my mother. And when I turned 14, I had enough. I literally ran out of patience with all of this. I just didn't like my ear being boxed. I didn't like any of these things anymore. I didn't like the way I was being raised. And at the age of 14, I decided to do something about it. So instead of quitting, I bridged that doubt gap, that instability gap, and I actually started working on my art. And I started focusing on just artwork. And I painted, I drew, I created, pieces in clay, to the point where I became so good, I focused so much on that I actually won great awards in high school and I was accepted at a top art school in the nation. But because of my background, I just didn't know, I didn't have that foundation to go. So early on, I would say that I started making decisions to build past those areas of instability and doubt. And then, at some point, you got to start building your own life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh, this is really amazing, especially with the statistics you just gave that. Yeah. 75% of adults experience trauma, and 73% of entrepreneurs they have unresolved trauma. It's really, really a whole lot, and it just dawned on me that there are some bosses the way they do the what they do owing to where they're coming from. And yeah, this is really a whole lot. So, and the fact that owing to this particular parts, you have to kind of choose your own path and yeah, find out your route. And so your motto then was never yield. Where did that
Yeah.
exact word came from? And what do you mean beyond just persistence?
Well, it's the only thing I've ever had
Oh,
tattooed on my body.
yeah, never yield.
You
Yeah.
know, because, like I said, my father died when I was 5, and that I didn't have that male or that masculine foundation I wasn't born with that, right? And so you just kind of go on your own, you're doing your own thing. I don't care how old you are, when there's not structure in the home, you will do your own thing. And so I hit the age of 23. But one of my brothers came up to me and they had a book. They had my father's yearbook, like a book from his high school, the year he was graduating high school. It was 1939. I had no idea really about my father from that standpoint. And he gave me that, asked me if I wanted that book, and I grabbed that book. And here I found out that my father was class president, or he was whatever he was. He was,
Oh,
he, yeah, he was, back then in 1939, they had debate clubs, and he was president of the debate club. And then there was a little chart on all the seniors. And I found his name written in bold in a sentence, and his name was Bert, and it was Bert Watts's motto is never yield. And it went into
hmm.
my soul that day. And it gave me a unique foundation that I had not
Hmm.
discovered who I was. So it came from my father indirectly, kind of celestial, right? It came from the heavens, because that book dropped on me and it really gave me great foundation at an early age.
Yeah, never yield. I think it's such a great consolation at that particular point where you didn't get to kind of remember your dad so much and having to see his works and reading through it and it brings some of those present and that word struck in a chord. It's really amazing. Yeah. So you build a framework around doubts as a signal rather than weakness. How much of that philosophy trace directly back to the 14 years old who has every reason to doubt everything and choose to use it differently?
Kind of found that statement never yield, right? That that battle, I'll call it a battle cry.
Yeah.
That battle cry of never yield, right? I found
Mm.
that even, it was in me, in my DNA. It was in me innately, right? I had that determination early. When you can bridge the gap from an insecurity or instability, or what we'll talk about here in a minute is doubt. There's got to be something in you that wants to live better. There's something in you that wants to be better. And I got to tell you, it's just in this, anytime I talk, it's never bragging. I just like to tell the story that, because I want others to feel like they're not alone and they can become a builder in their own life. But I barely made it out of high school. I was a C student. I was terrible. I never went to college, but I had something in me that wanted to be bigger and greater. I remember I end up starting 5 different companies. And so, in doing things that, like society would say you don't have a chance of
Yeah.
doing, right? And so if we could just talk about doubt for a minute, if you don't mind, because that's your question, is that it's not, we're not broken. We're not, we're not, when we say that, when people say I'm full of doubt, right? We go through these stages in our life and we say I'm full of doubt. I would say that's an incomplete statement, Benaiah, because doubt doesn't work alone. It doesn't stand
Mm.
alone. Doubt is an emotion. It's an emotion based on an unstable situation. Because you don't have doubt. You don't just wake up one day and say you doubt. Maybe you failed a test in school and you start doubting whether you can get to college, or you doubt that, like you've done something, let's say a relationship became unstable, right? And pretty soon you don't know how to, you don't know how to fix it, or and it forms a bunch of instability in how we feel, right? We're not sure which way the relationship is going. And then we start feeling doubt about that relationship. You see how doubt
Yeah.
works based on a situation. And so that's the big shift that I think is that it's very normal, Benaiah, for us to feel doubt. It's very normal for us to feel doubt in situations that we're not comfortable in or we don't understand. But one thing I will tell you is that doubt doesn't sit idle. It didn't come just to bother you. It's an emotion. And that emotion, just like fear, is designed to make you do something, right? Fear makes you get in survival mode, right? Doubt, what doubt is doing in a situation like that, it's demanding that we have an answer.
Mm.
It's forcing us to make a decision. This is the twist, to fix the situation, not us, because we're not broken. The situation is broken. We just happen to be in the situation. So when you really look at it, doubt has had a bad rap, right? We're full of doubt. Doubt is a bad thing. We have low self-confidence. Hey, how do I build my confidence back up? This will be the last thing I said on this, is that the idea that somebody came up to me, Benaiah, one time, and they said, I need you to help me with my self-esteem. Well, number one, it's self, that's you, right? And the word esteem is respect. So they're asking me to help them with their self-respect.
Yeah.
I, I can help you with confidence and I
Yeah.
can help you with self-respect. But I would tell you, if you deal with whatever the situation is and make a decision to
Mm.
move forward, doubt will have to take a back seat. And so will that instability will be solved.
Yeah, this is really a whole lot. And the moment you just describe it, that, yeah, doubt does not exist in isolation. It's you, it's actually more like cry for an answers to be given. When you just said that, I just remember when I was on higher institution, having to struggle with some courses, and the fact that I feel it once, I feel it twice, and I became doubtful about a whole lot of stuff. And I had to sit down and say, oh, why am I actually feeling it? And until I got to pass that particular thing before the doubt actually more like, oh, finally I rolled that way and just speak volume. So doubt cry for an answers, and until you look forward to it, you keep be doubtful about every situation. Yeah, amazing. So you
There
have,
was a there was
yeah,
there was a gentleman named this gentleman Dale Carnegie. Everybody
yeah,
knows Dale Carnegie, and he had a famous quote, and it was, "Inaction breeds doubt and
that,
fear. Action breeds
mm,
confidence and courage."
mm, yeah, action brings, oh, confidence and courage. Yeah, amazing. So also you have been building your company for over 4 decades. What business failure changed you the most, and what did it reveal that success had been hiding?
Mm. You know, when you have 40 years in business, there's a lot of things
Yeah,
that go on. I remember when I started my first business, there was a lot just in that, much less had 40 years and 5 businesses, right? And I would tell you is that we all struggle with insecurity, or we
yeah.
struggle in growth, even in as a leader, right? And people always they'll ask me, well, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you? I would say going bankrupt was probably the worst thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
But that was just bad planning, bad economy, those different things. But I would say, I got to tell you, the worst thing that ever happened to me in business is years of thinking that I was not like a micromanager, uh, because I found that when I find that micromanaging a business actually is a reflection of that person typically not wanting they're protecting their business and finances. So they micromanage. They try to keep from losing money, and instead of powering people. And I think that once we realize that that we're not the smartest person in every room, or we don't want to be the smartest person in every room, is where we really start surrounding ourselves with better people, better thinkers, people that help us throughout our life, our business life, our personal life. There's something I believe in, is that you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with, right? And
Yeah.
everybody wants to be the smartest person or the best person. And I don't want to be the worst person. I want to be somewhere in the middle, because then I can help somebody get up, and I can look forward to somebody to helping me up. And I would say that's the greatest lesson I ever learned in business, is really learn to surround ourselves with better people and smarter people. Because when we do that, we have a chance to grow, and we have a chance to help others on a much deeper level.
Yeah. Learn to surround yourself. Yeah. With smarter people. So that looking down, you can lend a helping hands. Looking up, you have those who could actually more like, yeah, lend that helping hands to you, so that will make you easily grow. You have patent investors and INSC 5,000 winners out. What does it take to keep executing on ideas across 40 years? And what is the most common reasons people with good ideas never build anything from them?
Well, a lot of people have good ideas. And a lot of people have good ideas, but a lot of people don't do anything with them.
Mm,
I believe the universe drops new ideas on all of us, and when we don't do it, somebody else will do it. And I really believe that. I believe that the ideas are out there, and some of us are more creative to come up with good ideas. Over 40 years, what I've really learned to do is that all of my business kind of went into another business. Like, there was another opportunity that came up. So it wasn't that I always came up with something unique. It's just I recognized the opportunity to solve a problem. And that's what really entrepreneurship is, or leadership is finding a way to do that. And that Inc. 5000, that was because I was one of the top 5,000 top companies in the US that grew, had a huge growth spurt between 2 years. So between 2021 and 2022, I grew by 238%. I made that list. And I have to tell you this is how I feel about it, Benaya. I don't look at awards or rewards or those things that help us, like those are like milestones in the pathway to get somewhere, right? And here's another shift to that. In my world, because I'm a builder, I build, that's what I build businesses, I build opportunities, I build bridges. In that world, I look at awards or measurements as proof, or the proof that the foundation that I built was rock solid. It's the proof that I'm doing the right thing along the line. So one business always led to another. I jumped into one business after my ad agency failed. I had an ad agency, and it failed because of 9/11 here in the States. So what happened was the whole economy started shrinking, and marketing and advertising was discretionary spending. So I ended up going bankrupt. I lost all my clients. They pulled all their retainers. But at the same time, when I was failing, I was also building. I was already building the next bridge or that next foundation to get to the next level. And I think that as long as we stay active and creative and our eyes are open and aware of opportunities, I think we can get somewhere. And Benaya, I got to say, if you don't let me just slip in this in a little bit, is that I've never done anything for money. I've
mm,
never, other than when I first started, I had to make a small amount of rent payment. I was by myself. I was a young guy. I was 23 years old, but I never did anything for money. I always did it to solve a problem or find an opportunity to help other people. Because, there's a gentleman, Simon Sinek, if you
yeah.
know
Some
him.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, but he said something
Yeah.
great. He
Leaders eat
says,
last.
money is the result of the things that you like to do. It's not
Yeah.
the reason we like to do, right? So in 40 years, I decided that passion was my number one thing, because my passion to solve somebody else's problem. When money wanes, if money's your whole target and your whole passion, the minute money starts getting slow or weak or low, our passion begins to go slow, right? But when we're driving ourselves to become better people, and by the way, you only become better people by you doing things, right? By action. But the reality is that once we really learn that we want to solve a problem for someone else and there's a market for it, I think that's been the strength of my 4 decades of being in business.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Which this is really a whole lot to get to piece. Yeah, that's good ideas does not thrive if you don't more like do anything with it. And also that, yeah, those particular periods when you were going out, award was a proof that, yeah, you were actually more like in line and getting it done. And also, money is a result of what you like, more like money is a result of your contribution. This is really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And also, you talk about the 4 factors of instability. How much of that framework come from your living through your own instability at 14? And what did you understand about those forces before you named them?
The 4 factors of instability are: number one, it's pending decisions. These are things, by the way, if doubt is the emotional signal, instability, the situation, is the source of that doubt.
Mm,
I hope people really understand that you are not the source of the doubt. Doubt is an emotion you feel based on that situation. So in 4 factors of instability, number one is pending decisions. Something needs a decision, but we haven't made the call yet. Number 2 would be unresolved tension. It's usually when something feels edgy. Again, if you notice a feeling, but nobody is willing to be honest with it. The idea of that is like somebody is not doing their part, but nobody wants to hold anybody accountable, right? And that shows up when the room vibe changes when somebody walks in. We have tension, right? And that tension brings doubt because there's no answer. Number 3 is perceived instability. And its cousin, I call it its kissing cousin
yeah.
comparison. We compare ourselves, comparison, right? So perceived instability would be related, Benaya, to like imposter syndrome, thinking that we're not good enough. But there's no proof that we're not good enough. We're just telling ourselves that we're not good
Yeah.
enough. It's not based on anything. And it's usually perceived instability happens when something feels uneasy before we even know the facts.
Mm,
If you're starting a business and you've done so well, and then you start feeling insecure about it because somebody was next to you and their business looked like it's going better, we don't have all the facts. And so that can bring in that instability or that doubt as well. And number 4 is uncertain outcomes. Uncertain outcomes. And that's when a situation demands action, but you don't know how it ends.
yeah.
Like we're waiting on results. We're waiting on somebody to give us feedback. We're waiting on somebody's approval. We have done what we can do, right? We've done what we can do, and we're waiting for somebody else's response. So we're not sure. It's an uncertain outcome. But Benaya, if you start a product and you design a product, right? If you design a product, you're not sure that's going to sell. You've looked at the market, you've done the things, you think it's the best thing out there. You're going to do the, but there's still an uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
And so until from when you built the product to when you sell that first product, there's a gap in the middle. And that gap is usually we start filling it with doubt. It shows up every day in life. And I would say uncertain outcome feels like waiting around with lots of pressure on us.
Yeah.
It's a feeling, right?
Yeah.
And once we realize that we can't control the outcome, because doubt is that uneasy feeling and it's signaling us to take some action, I think we have to trust our work. We have to trust our effort.
Mm,
We have to learn to build from the outcome, no matter what that outcome is. Like if it's bad, then you got to build better.
yeah.
If it's good, you can still build better.
Yeah. Oh, this is really amazing and a whole lot of things to get to piece here. The first thing being that, yeah, doubt is an emotion and instability is the source of it. And it's really lovely we are actually getting to see that. Yeah, I think if you struggle with doubt every now and then, check out those kind of instability that's in there that's actually fueling it to us coming into being. Pending decision, unresolved tension. Yeah, both perceiving stability and with an uncertain outcome. This is really amazing. And just getting to see from this very end. I think it make it easier being that especially more like that happen into those instability happen into the fact that you didn't trust this particular outcome. And if you can actually learn to trust your work and rebuild on it, being that outcome is not left to you every now and then, but if you can actually more like take your personal to either to rework on it towards becoming better or to actually see many loopholes saying it in a different way. This is really amazing, and thank you so much for sharing your heart.
Well, I appreciate the time to share it.
Yeah, thank you. So you say successful people are often mistake on starting for failure. Why and what does the confusion cost them in real life?
I like to look at things and experiences. I but I am not the guy that's going to sit and give you a bunch of advice.
Yeah,
You know you better than I know you, right? So for me to sit on the outside and give anybody advice or a leader, so I like to give experiences or experience shares or that kind of thing. I think that leaders, if you and I want to answer your question, but I feel like leaders um, need to pay more attention to their teams and around them, right? And we want to give advice to everybody and everything. And as leaders, we want to give direction. We want to be powerful. We want to feel that we're doing something, right? And what I really found is that when we can shift from ourselves to our teams and really build our culture, it removes a lot of instability. It really does, because again, not being the smartest person in the room. People underestimate business culture, Benaiah. They underestimate the power of teams working together. And what we want to do is we want to separate ourselves like we're greater or better, but the reality is we are the same. We're just the person with the vision. And when we talk about business culture, and I don't want to shift it too much, but it's kind of important. When I deal with people and they're struggling with their companies or whatever it is, the idea is that business culture is either intentional or accidental. It's the idea of empowering other people to be better than they are. Again, we're shifting it from us. We spend too much time on us
yeah,
and giving advice to everybody else versus, hey, what can I do for my team to make them better? At the end of the week, we look at the team and we look at them and we say, well, hey, you did a good job, right? We say you did a good job this week. What a great time. We had a great time this week. Did a great job. I said, but that's really incomplete. What if we add why and what they did
mm,
that made it a good job? And then tie it into our value system. Let's say one of our core values is own it. So I look at that customer service person who saved us a real bad heartache last week because they took it, they owned the situation. They took care of the situation. So when I'm walking out the door, I stop by at Tika's desk and I look at her and I said, Tika, last week we almost lost that account. But because you owned that situation, you took care of that situation, you made the client feel the way we need to make the client
yeah,
feel, you did a great job. See, it's really into understanding who and what we are and taking the time in some of the details. Because again, remember that doubt is an instability feeling. It's a feeling and it's a signal to do action. So everything's about building. You got to think about everything's about building. It isn't about trying to solve ourselves, trying to fix ourselves. We just got to figure out, like, culture isn't, or that branding isn't that logo on your on your sweatshirt or on the back wall. The brand and the culture is really how we show up every day for others and how we answer our phone.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's Benaiah, this solves a lot of problems when we start shifting it off of us and on to empowering others to do better and be better
yeah.
for who they are.
Yeah. Amazing. This is really amazing. And when we get to kind of train our team, and they get to know this by heart, especially branding is not the logo, but to show up for others. And from that particular lens, it's easier for them to give advice and even chip in one or two things without other than you just giving advice every now and then. It make the environment, yeah, a bit calm and everybody willing to lay a helping hands towards making things better. Other than just looking forward to you as a leader to give decisions and actually give the push. And it's really amazing. Yeah. So your book is called When Doubt Become Design. What does that transformation actually look like? The moment doubt stop being noise and start becoming structure.
Hmm. Well, I didn't write it out as a self-help book. I
Yeah.
didn't write it as an advice book. There's no advice in the book. What it is, I wrote it as a prescriptive memoir,
Mm,
which means a memoir is obviously something of my life, but the idea of that it's a prescriptive memoir, which means that hopefully you'll see yourself in the pages. So I have 41 stories and 15 chapters that covered my life from the early trauma years that introduced me to like the early stage of
yeah.
instability and doubt to learning how to become a builder in my own life. So, these are both personal, very personal stories I wanted to share, and also stories from past 40 years of different things that I went through. Because my goal of the book is that I want to write it. I wrote it so many others would be allowed to see themselves in the stories or in the pages and understand that they're not alone.
Mm,
And they too can become a builder in their own life as well. Like some of the things that I've gone through or other people have gone through in business, we had to find a solution. Most people get lost in personal doubt and personal instability, and they never get up again. But at some point, if one of us can get going and say, hey, if I did it, you can do it too. That's what I hope the book is, that it brings the reader.
yeah. And I think it's really lovely, especially when you just make purpose of stories and them seeing how you did it different. Because there is this thing that comes easier when you get to kind of, let's say someone is struggling financially. The person might think it's just peculiar to me alone. But having to go to meetings where you have all the people there, let's say they are men and they just sat down and start sharing their stories, how they struggle financially and what they do different. And just hearing it alone is so reassuring. I say, oh, Dennis did it and I was able to come out from it. Oh, Mark did it. And I think this particular framework, having the stories here and there, just clarity and give you an actionable step you could actually take differently towards the end of it out. And yeah, it's really amazing. Uh, so lastly, if you could go back and say one thing to the 14 years old who decide to make his own path, what will it be?
Never yield, never stop, never, never,
Yeah.
never stop, never
Mm,
stop, never stop. There's a thing in my there's in a place in my book in one of the chapters. It's called Borrowed Fathers. Because I didn't have a father,
yeah.
I found that there were men in my life that became borrowed fathers to
Mm,
me. And one thing I noticed about the borrowed fathers, and the same thing that I want to be to somebody else, Benaiah, is I don't want to tell them how to live their life. I want to show them that you can live your own life and become the powerful person that you already are. Because I can't tell you that you're a great person. You have to tell yourself you're a great person. So my job is to breathe life into you, right? To help you see you as the badass that you are.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Martin. This has really been a lovely sections, and thank you for sharing your heart with us on the Quit to Win. So from all this, we would love to reach out to you to get your book and to follow you across various platforms. How can they reach out, and where's the best platform?
The simplest way to do it is go to martinjwatts.com. That's martinjwatts.com. And you'll find a little bit about the book, but you can order the book from there. But you know what would really be really important to me? That would be very meaningful if somebody drops me a note and said, I heard you, I read the book, it helped me. That's why I do what I do, is to make impact in other people's lives. Because what I found is I get healed in certain things, other people can get healed in certain
Yeah,
things.
so true. Amazing.
So reach
Thank you.
out. Yeah. Just reach out to me on the web.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martin. And from all things, who love to kind of reach out, check the show notes, and you usually see the link to reach out. Never it is not just a motto. It's a decision made at 14 that build a lifetime of work is one this audience is going to carry. Yeah, remember that doubt is not the enemy. The status quo is, and it's never designed for you to win anyway. Once again, it's really a pleasure and honor having you on the show, Martins.
Benai, it's been my pleasure. I wish you well, my friend.